Okay, we're live. Yay!
Okay. Hello, everybody in the world watching this, hopefully. Yay, okay, it's working on my phone. So, today we are doing a diversity panel, and I have some friends here. I have Taz, Jackie, and Ashleeta, and we are talking about issues relating to diversity in the pinup world. This is live, so pardon us if there are any hiccups or snafus. If you have any questions, please, oh no, what did I do? I clicked on something weird. Please ask them in the comments on the YouTube feed. I can answer them because I'm going to have them on my phone. Oh, I need to turn my volume off. Okay, I'm hearing myself. So I am basically just here to moderate. I'm here to put this on all of my social media so that we reach as many people as possible, because this is really, really, really important, especially now, especially with Viva coming up. So I have a little list of questions. I'm gonna have to multitask. This is very strange. Or a list of topics. So the first thing I thought was a good way to start, which I think, Taz, you sent this to me, was vintage style, not vintage values. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who started it. I tried to look it up. I don't know who started it. If anybody knows who sort of started the vintage style, not vintage values thing, please credit them in the comments. But what do you guys think of this whole thing?
Where can we start? I think that this is something that I see a lot in the resale groups. Where it's like, buy this blackface doll, or like, let's have this skirt with like slavery, people picking cotton on it, which like literally happened 2 weeks ago.
Mammy chalkware.
Yeah, and it's just like, why? And like, when someone brings up that it's problematic, I just donate it to a museum or something where it's like not actively harming people. Mm-hmm. But I think that's like where I first heard that phrase come up, was there was like a lot of pushback on those items, and like I appreciate that Ulala has banned those completely. Mm-hmm. But I still see it in other groups. And another thing is that I see is when it's brought up, the group gets shut down rather than having it addressed, like just completely shut down.
Well, I think where it started was more of in the sexism part of it, where like we want to be vintage girls, but we don't want to be housewives, and we don't want to be. So I think that was more widely accepted, but now there's pushback in the sort of racial dimension of it, where I think a lot of people, because I've seen sellers that will sell something or list something, and then everyone goes, "Oh my God, that's racist," and some of them go, "Screw you, it's vintage and it's great, and the world was different then." And then some people are horrified. Like I myself have sold stuff where I didn't even think about it, and then someone's like, "Oh my God, this is horrible," and I'm like, and then I take it down. So I think there's like, I think it's, most of us are on the same page that like, we're women, yay, fuck men. But then there's the weird, but we still want vintage values with racism.
Yeah, that's intersectionality.
Yeah, right. Well, yes,
intersectionality.
Exactly. I think that it's also the sort of thing where I find a really effective counterpoint when people are pushing back against that phrase, which I really love, and I really don't know who created it. However, Dandy Wellington sells pins that say it, and they're really cool. So if you want to support a man of color in the vintage scene, buy some.
I love him. He's so cute.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So he sells pins that say vintage values, not.
Yeah,
cool.
they're beautiful. Although I thought he created it actually. Then I went and did some research, and he's like, I did not create this, but I don't know who
I
did.
think the first one I saw was at a protest a long time ago, like a photo of a protest a long time ago.
I've seen that photo
on their poster.
Oh, like a meme or something?
It was someone at a protest, and they had it on a sign, and it was like years. It was even before like Trump was elected.
I've seen it too.
That's the earliest thing I can remember.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it might have even been something not even in our world. That just,
exactly. Yeah. So, but I think that I agree with you all, and I think that a counterpoint that I use that I found to be really effective. So part of my background is that I am a clinical social worker. I'm not currently practicing, but that's like my academic background, and I focused on cultural phenomenology in undergrad when I did psych and neuroscience. And a really effective counterpoint you can use is, like, if you're encountering these conversations and people really aren't getting it, you can always bring up things from the past that were real bad.
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh, well, you know, I hear you saying that, you know, this is something that's part of history, and you know, things have changed now, but like you still want to have this thing that represents this awful time in our history. Like, so like not everything from history is good.
Yeah, like marital rape.
Yeah, like marital rape isn't good. Things change, laws change, social mores change. Women can vote now. Black people don't have to be slaves anymore.
Well, I mean, I argue that the prison system is institutionalized slavery.
I agree completely. But you can't buy and sell literally people anymore, theoretically. But
There's not separate water fountains.
there's not. Yeah, there's
the small good things too.
we have a lot of progress to do, or progress to make, and if we don't recognize that these are the things that contributed to the oppression of people, especially Black people who are survivors of the transatlantic slave trade in America, then if we don't remember our history and honor it and try to make it better, then we'll never make progress. So yeah, a lot of things from history, especially American history, were real bad.
Yeah.
So we don't have to honor those values.
Yeah, we don't have to hold on to everything vintage.
Exactly. Just because it's vintage doesn't mean that it's awesome.
Yeah. So before we go further, I did also want to talk about representation, because I think a lot of white people in the rockabilly culture don't understand why representation is important. So the reason I have such a diverse I'm so froggy this week. My allergies have been so bad. Why I have such a diverse panel of women is for representation, so that you guys do have a voice in our very white subculture. So I want to hear from you guys all specifically why representation is important to you specifically in your sort of frame of reference.
So something that I always like to discuss is.
Oh, I mean to interrupt you, but first,
Yes, go ahead.
Also, for those of you guys that don't even know what representation means, basically it just means that people from, I can't think of the word.
Marginalized groups.
Marginalized, thank you. I was thinking the wrong word. People from marginalized groups feel like their voices are being heard in the bigger picture. Go.
Okay, so first, I'm going to say it now, because I know we're going to get to it later. Representation and tokenism, we need to keep those things.
Okay, so explain
We don't want, tokenism is like, oh, I got this one Black girl, she fills my quota, we're good. People don't think I'm racist. So I think a lot of the times.
I can't be racist. I have this one Black friend.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the times people want to claim representation, but in reality, it's becoming tokenism. So like when I first started, I didn't see, because I started on like Tumblr, and I didn't see that many pinups that looked like me. And when I did, they didn't have names. We had no information on them. We didn't know who they were. So one day I said, well, I'm going to just do this myself. And I hired my friend Brittany to do a pinup shoot for me. And I kind of went from there. But it wasn't just me, and it can't just be me. You know, we need to have other women of color. We need to have women that are darker than me, women that have their hair natural. We need to have a variety of different types of people in marginalized groups, because it can't always just be one, because then that's not authentic and it's not genuine. It's just trying to fill a quota.
Yeah.
So do you feel like with the difference between representation and tokenism, like let's say there's like a Pinup Contest, right? There's 5 of us judges.
Yeah.
So how do you keep from it being tokenism if there's only 5 spots to fill?
I mean,
you know, I don't know what the answer to that is.
I have some ideas on that, but I want to hear from you first. Do you have any thoughts?
because it doesn't just apply to race.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not entering this conversation in terms of race. I'm entering it purely to give some sort of perspective in terms of like accessibility for disabled people and like neurodiverse, et cetera. But in terms of, I don't know if I can answer that question in terms of like, how do we get a variety without it being seen as tokenism? especially if it's just like, one of each, then it looks weird to me. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question.
I think for me, and this is something that when I have been asked to give my input on some issues that we've been having within the community, something that I try to encourage is that it comes from the very beginning planning stages. So if you want to foster a space that is truly diverse and inclusive instead of tokenizing, then the outreach, the planning stages of the event, of the group, whatever it is that you're doing, it starts from the foundation. Foundationally needs to incorporate policies and guidelines that foster a respectful, diverse, inclusive space. So, for example, I'm a performance artist, and I produce performance events. So one of the events that I produce is a burlesque musical parody of Hamilton. Actually, it's called Hamilties, and we tour around the country. And so far, we've just done the West Coast, but the show itself is deliberately a diverse show. That's something that the creator Lin-Manuel Miranda did intentionally, and I felt that if I were to do a show, I would want to keep in the vein of the original work. However, I have decided to expand this rubric to all things that I'm involved in. So that's why whatever projects I work on, no matter where they are, I try to impart this baseline, which is essentially I want to create a space where I'm doing special directed outreach towards marginalized populations. So for an event where I'm taking auditions and submissions, for me, that looks like it's essentially affirmative action, but outside of the academic sphere. So I do special outreach. I contact performers of color directly. I contact trans performers directly, performers who are differently abled, who are neuroatypical, who are older than who we usually see. And I find that those groups tend to be the least represented in the burlesque and variety arts. So I have a priority application period for those people. And I have in my application form, I have a little section that says, tell me about what the impact is that being which marginal, tell me about your identity, and how being in those groups has impacted your experience as a performer who was marginalized. And that way I get to hear their story too. And if someone who's applying in that period perhaps is not belonging to one of those groups, then they have a chance to really sit and think about why are they taking this space, or why are they trying to apply now. And then I think that has the impact of it's different than saying people are welcome. It's walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. You can say everyone's welcome, but yeah, but whatever, Confederate flags are still allowed, that's fine. But then if you put a policy in place that actually bans the Confederate flags, then you're showing that you're actually committed to the work. So for something like a pinup contest, what you can do is and this is a suggestion I've made that I have yet to see implemented anywhere, where I've made the suggestion, but that's okay. Maybe someday. But you can have a priority application period for pinups who are belonging to marginalized populations. And I've offered to help, I work as an event consultant, that's something I do professionally, and I've offered to do it for free or for a discounted rate, but no one's taken me up on it yet. So if anyone out there wants to do it, I'll help you for now for free, although I shouldn't be giving it away, but I just want to see it happen. So that's an actionable suggestion that I have, that I've seen work in my own events that I produce, that people who are specifically in the pinup pageant community can enact. And that can be expanded to other contests and events in our scene.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I know that was a really long answer, but that I think is like a real thing we can do.
And I think continuing on your point from that other perspective, from someone who's not working in the actual company that has to do with the competition and stuff, something that Pinups for Diversity did, which was a huge part and help with Bella Sin, who's a burlesque dancer in Ohio. So I've seen her do this from an outside perspective in a burlesque community, where if you're working from outside the system and you're trying to get a more diverse application process. So what we've tried this year from our side was reaching out to women of color, marginalized women, plus size women, disabled people, trans women, was helping them write their applications, hooking them up with photographers who will get their photos done professionally, helping them proofread and promoting them from our platform.
And I can say from my perspective as a judge, like just generally for any applicant, proofreading and good pictures are so huge, because the pictures, honestly, I mean, I read all the applications, but the picture is the first thing that you're gonna see if it's like poorly lit, which is a huge thing with women of color.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it is really, it really is. If you're just looking down pictures and it doesn't stick out to you, like somebody that has dark skin is not lit well, they're gonna look dark. I mean, it's just the way your brain and your eyes pick things out. So that's a big thing, and just having like a team that can help you. And that's, I try, like when I have girls that book for my when I do pinup tours, like I love when women of color will come and book, because it's like, yes, you're gonna have like good quality pictures, but I think also women of color are scared to do those things because they feel like they're not sort of welcome. Like even the few that book with me are like, I haven't seen myself, so I was scared to do this. So that's going back to representation. I think that's why it's important, because the more you see people that look like you, it was the same for me when I started being tattooed. There were no tattoo girls, so I thought like, oh, everyone's gonna think I'm a fetish, and I'm gonna be like the rock and roll nasty girl.
Yeah.
And obviously it's
I mean,
different
that's
now.
what I'm gonna call you now.
Rock and roll nasty Dollface.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This is something that actually Ashleeta and I have talked about. Whenever we shoot, we always bring our own makeup. And this is something like
I love when
that
women do that too.
Angeline well, it's not for a good reason. Angeline, let's talk about this.
Angelique.
Oh, sorry, Angeline.
Yeah.
Who else?
Angelique, Black Pinup.
Yeah, Angelique.
Yeah.
And someone else who I've talked about this with someone else as well. But it's that it's just that there's, when you're shooting, you have no guarantee that the artist will know how to do your makeup. And when you're shooting, especially like, since I'm medium to darker skin tone person, depending on the time of year, and I'm also plus size, like for plus size people, like people don't know how to shoot plus size models, and like in terms of angles, and in terms of darker skin tone, it's only in very, very, very recent history, like I'm talking the last 24 months, that people are starting to recognize that there is a market and that there is a different technique, because the actual subject of photography is based around racist teachings, because all of the control cards based back in the day were all based on white skin people.
So I want to hold you for just 1 second. I realize that there's comments coming in that I haven't been looking at. Okay, so Alexis.
Yeah.
She says, having one black friend or person of color does not make a panel diverse. True. Problem with the Pinup Contest is that people in charge first have to recognize that there is a problem.
Absolutely.
True.
That's really tricky. They have to want to actually make things
Not
better.
everyone can afford really good pictures. Also true, which is I think why it's important, you were saying, when you create like a group of people that are willing to sort of help each other
Exactly.
and help people like raise each other up a little bit. But that's also, I think it's important for like Queen Bee pinups to sort of take baby pinups under their wing and be like, oh girl, let me help you with this. Like,
well, and that's the thing, like a lot of the bigger names who tend to be, slimmer people and or white people often also get a lot more stuff for free, like get like T for P or paid shoots. I have had to pay for almost every shoot that I've ever done. And I'm very lucky, and I've also worked really hard to have a comfortable day job, so I can afford to do that. And it's even been hard for me, especially because like, you know, I can't afford to shoot all the time. I try to shoot like once a quarter, but like I don't have as much stuff in my portfolio because some of it ends up being not usable. Or I haven't gotten my edits back yet or whatever, but my portfolio, I've been working really hard on expanding my portfolio, but like I just don't have the same opportunities as a smaller person does, or a lighter skinned person, or someone who has both.
Absolutely.
So that's like, yeah, like there's a huge issue of financial access there. As well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no,
I can also say too, though, like as a judge, like when I'm looking through pictures, these days, this is like I've seriously seen some submissions of people that are doing stuff themselves. Like I think it's more a matter of like having somebody that can help you sort of put it together and sort of be a voice of like the lighting's not so good. I mean, there's Facetune. Like you can do just as good at Photoshop as any photographer. I mean, not to cut down photographers because everybody's trying to make a living.
Yeah.
And same thing with makeup. I mean, practicing, having a friend that's really good at makeup. Like I definitely think that there is a market for paying for pinups and paying for photo shoots and all that, especially for girls that are like really trying hard to do it. But I also think that it's not necessary, especially if you're entering a contest. I don't think you have to pay for that stuff. I think if you have a group of girls that can help each other, and I think that's what you were saying, where you're trying to do that. I think that's
The
really
support
more
system.
important, than paying photographers. And I can say I make my living off this, and girls don't need to pay me to have your submissions. I don't think that's what we're saying as judges. It doesn't need to be paid shoots or professional shoots. There just needs to be like, and for everybody that enters, just a little bit more like thought put into like the pictures that are taken. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, what is so crazy to me is that, and you guys are probably aware, Lars, the photographer, he
uses
so
natural
good,
light.
and he uses natural light, and he's so good
He's
at
amazing.
lighting women of color.
Oh my
Which is
gosh.
what I don't understand is when people have synthetic light that's, you know, they don't have to chase, because I've shot with him multiple times, we have to chase the light, and he still lights me amazing. Angelique, he's lit amazing. He just did like a mini shoot for La Femme Noire for gloves, and that girl looked amazing. And what I don't understand is if he is taking the time to figure it out, he doesn't even use synthetic light, he uses natural light. Why is it so hard for other photographers to figure it out? Because I've seen photos of girls that I'm really good friends with, and it's like, you look beautiful, but I can't see you because your photographer clearly doesn't give a shit enough to learn how to light people of color. And so like maybe, although I feel like this is such like a, like I haven't even asked a suggestion, but maybe there needs to be a workshop for like how to light people of color.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
or a
amazing.
workshop for people, like for pinups of color, just because it seems like I've had makeup artists too that like made me look so ashy, which is why I always bring my own makeup. I just shouldn't have to do
Ashy is right
make you look
here.
ashy, and I just, if there needs to be some sort of workshop to help people who are not used to or who prefer not to shoot people of color or people of a different size, like, is there not a way to create a workshop for people to figure that out?
I think that's also too feeling safe to ask questions. Like for me, the first time I did a black girl's hair, I was so scared. Like I had never touched textured hair before, and I had no idea. And she walked in and she looked at my face, and she was like, I'm gonna help you. And I was like, thank you. And she did, and she kind of gave me pointers as I was going. And after that, it was like, oh, okay, like it's not really that much different. It's just different.
Yeah.
And even still, like I'm learning. But I think it's the same thing with photographers, like being able to ask, like, you know, what angle do you feel best at? Or, you know, how do I like this, if you know, maybe. But I definitely think that's also, like you said, photographers caring enough, because I do think that darker girls are such a small percentage of what they're shooting that they don't feel like they need to learn that.
And then that's self-perpetuating, like the issue,
Exactly,
like
then it
gets
makes girls
itself.
scared to do it.
Yeah, so it's like when I'm picking a photographer to shoot with, especially these days, if I don't see darker people in their portfolio and plus size people in their portfolio, I'm just kind of like, no thanks, I don't want to give you my money.
Yeah.
So
Because you never know what's gonna happen.
exactly, and
But also too, the more professional photographers, like Shannon Brooke, Lars, like the bigger names, like they know because they're professionals, and they know that as a professional, that's your job.
Yeah,
To know
like,
that.
I really want to shoot with the two of them, and also Isaiah Mays, who is a man of color. He's mixed race, Black and Bangladeshi, and he shoots like beautiful, like they're like reminiscent of. I think he actually shoots for Playboy and like the Maxim and like that genre of like basically like what modern day pinup is, like contemporary pinup style stuff. So like a lot of like in bathing suits on beaches, that sort of thing, and every shade and size.
Yeah,
And
as soon as you said
they're-
his name, I can think of the plus size girl off the
Yeah.
top of my head that is shot and one color off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
and they're gorgeous, and he's selling his work for big money. So it's like, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, well, like if they can do it, like why aren't these other photographers doing it? I think it goes back to Alexis's really good point of like, it's do they have the desire? Do they even care?
Yeah.
Do they want to do the work? That's the thing. It's like, I don't get why you wouldn't want to do the work when, like, wouldn't you want to make more money and get more clientele and also like not hurt people?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, doing the work opens the door.
That's also another thing I've noticed with live photography for burlesque. There will be a show and there'll be a person of color plus this person, they'll get maybe 2 photos and everyone else gets multiple photos, different angles, like great lighting. And that's another thing that I've noticed where it seems like it's just that the desire isn't there.
Right.
Because we're all lit the same, we're all at the same angle, we're all up on that stage, but not all.
Sorry, I'm not ignoring you guys. I was reading that people are doing
Yeah,
this. I just want to interject really quickly with something that's ACE activist has added or asked, and I don't know if ACE is a person of color. I assume that they are by this, but this has been something that has been personally I've wondered because I'm in a lot of groups online where issues will come up about race issues or whatever, and women of color will go, I'm not here to educate you, go educate yourself. And I've read that a lot. So this person, Ace, said there needs to be spaces created for people of color to educate non-people of color about people of color issues.
Nope. Disagree.
But from what everything else Ace has said, I kind of get the impression that they might be a person of color. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm curious is, because there are times where I see something where people are upset about something, but I don't really know why. And then I'm like, but I feel like I don't want to ask you because I don't want to put you guys in that position of, so where do we go to educate? I mean, obviously this diversity panel is something I'm hoping will be one of those places.
A great place to do that is White Nonsense Roundup. They are white people and they're very educated and they will educate you for free. All you have to do is tag them and they are totally willing to speak up. White Nonsense Roundup.
I'm gonna type it. I'm typing it into the comments.
And but the post has to be public. So, but they're a great resource. There's I think Everyday Feminism.
Is it on a specific platform?
I think it's
Facebook.
just Facebook.
Okay.
They're fantastic. There are courses that you can take. There are, I think Everyday Feminism has one on their website. There's also I don't know names off the top of my head, but I know that there are forums that exist on Facebook. There are like groups that are specifically for like,
For those kind of questions.
for white people to help other white people like understand. Like you can also offer to pay whichever person it is you want to ask a question. Be like, I know I'm not, like, couch it exactly like this. I know I'm not entitled to be educated by you, but if you have the time and the energy and the desire, I would like to compensate you for help in XYZ thing. Now, because I am an academic and I have a lot of expertise in addition to my like lived experience of 3 decades of dealing with this stuff, I tend to charge a little bit higher rate because like I have credentials and stuff behind me, and that makes my experience a little bit different. But you know, I start at $100 an hour. I think that's an extremely reasonable rate for like a one-on-one tutoring session. But not everyone's going to charge that. Not everyone's going to feel like that's necessary, and not everyone's going to be willing to do that at the same time. So like, I think it just depends. But there's resources there. Also, like, if you haven't at least Googled it or tried to Google it, like, then you need to be starting there.
Like
if you're not,
your question.
Googling your question. I know there's like an Instagram channel.
Just interjection. ACE is an indigenous queer woman of color. So that's I think another point too is that not one person, like I definitely know that I'm a feminist, I'm a white feminist, and there are other white feminists that feel different about feminist issues than I do.
You're a feminist who is white. You're not a white feminist.
Yeah.
You're an intersectional feminist. You're a feminist who happens to be white.
Right.
You don't want to say that you're a white feminist.
White feminists are
like
considered
white power.
category.
Okay, I am a feminist who is white. I mean, I've always just said I'm a feminist. So yes, I'm a feminist who's white. But within that, there's feminists that are also white that disagree with ways I go about things. So same thing as women of color. I'm sure you guys have people that oppose.
But like, also we have to take into account internalized issues,
True.
and not one person doesn't speak for everyone. And also the idea of requiring people of color to continuously educate. Essentially, what you were asking us to do is explain why we deserve humanity. And having to explain that over and over and over again, why you as a person deserve humanity, is exhausting. It contributes to health issues.
It's
And
mentally
like
damaging.
racial battle fatigue is a real thing. And I think a lot of us are getting burned out. So it's not really our job. It's nice if you have a friend, and when I am close with someone, I will private message them to explain to them, but I don't have to do that for everyone because it's exhausting. And like, there's a lot of other resources that don't require constant emotional labor, because that definitely starts to take a toll.
There's let me look for it. There's an Instagram challenge that a friend of mine did. That's like, it's like 30 days of like examining your white feminism or something like that.
It's she's a burlesque dancer, right?
Yeah.
She does contortionism.
Sorry?
She does contortion.
Yeah, Christina Nakaya.
Christina,
Yeah.
She participated.
So I just want to interject really fast. Someone brought up something important too, going back to when we were talking about photographers that don't shoot diversity and all that. Michelle said, I think it's important for white pinups to choose photographers who shoot diverse clientele, choose businesses you value. And I think that
That
goes
is a great way of
across
being
the
ally.
board.
Yep.
Choosing businesses that are inclusive in sizes. Like when you're shopping, choosing photographers that are inclusive with diversity. Also paying attention to the subject matter that people are shooting, like when people are shooting
Yeah.
Nazi paraphernalia.
Just
Yeah.
idols.
Yeah, I mean, so that kind of leads us into the other thing we were talking about before this started. Also into another thing that's on here is cultural appropriation.
One second.
Yeah.
So another resource is for Instagram. There's this Instagram challenge that's specifically for female feminists who are white. And it's hashtag me and white supremacy. And it's done by, the idea is from @WildMysticWoman. And it's, I think, 30 days of prompts that you can post on Instagram, and you can see what other people have posted about their reflections of things that they've learned. So I feel like that would be like a pretty good
That's great.
resource,
That's
and like
Instagram.
an Instagram challenge. So like, and then you can like see what other people in the community have said, and you don't have to, you don't have to put more labor on the heads of people of color or people who are marginalized. So
Great. I just typed that into the comments too in the hashtag. So going back to cultural appropriation, which was something we were talking about before this started, and something that I think is one of the biggest issues that's happening in the pinup, one of many, but it's happening in the pinup world right now, is I was saying before, for people like me, a grandma pinup that started this a long, long time ago, when pinup started, there were a lot of we mimicked the pinups of the past, and the pinups of the past were doing, Native American headdresses and tiki and whatever other things that now we all know are racist or not okay or hurtful to people. So that is one thing I think that starts to come up, is you find these images or pictures. There was a picture that I took when I first started. It was a Mexican photographer. He wanted to shoot me as a chola, and he wanted to do it for stock photography. I had no idea what stock photography was. I signed a contract, I signed away all my rights, and he sold my pictures all over the place, and they're still coming up. So even though now I don't post them, and I've explained and apologized and whatever, these pictures are still coming up, and they just came up in a BuzzFeed video.
Decoded.
So what's that? Decoded, yeah. So for me, those pictures now being posted are out of my hands because it's something that I signed my rights away to, which sucks. All I can do is apologize for it. Like I said, in the beginning, there were a lot of things that we didn't know yet were offensive or wrong. And I'm a white girl from the Northwest. Like, I was really sheltered in my life. So as I've grown and studied and researched and all of that, things have changed. So I think that, I guess my question is, where's the line between, yes, I fucked up, and then it's accepted, and apologies accepted, and we move forward, and we still stay friends and allies. And then there's the line of, yes, I fucked up, but I'm not going to apologize for it, and you're a jerk, and that person's canceled.
So I think the best and most recent example of this is Kevin Hart. because although I never actually saw his original apology, so he said a lot of horrible
He
things.
said homophobic things.
Yes,
Right? Yeah.
and he said that he apologized in the past and he's grown about it and that he's not going to apologize again. The thing is, you have to keep apologizing every time it comes up. Unfortunately, you just have to keep apologizing and not getting defensive. So while you may not feel that way anymore and you may not be proud of it, every time it comes up, you have to apologize and own it. Although I will point out that Nazis were never like a thing that we did not know about.
No, that's
right? That's always going to be.
It's like, well, I didn't know that Nazis were bad.
Well, and that's also too where there's the line. I mean, obviously Nazis are an extreme example, but there's also lines where there's people who are like, well, you should have known better even back then. But then it's like, then there's things that are, I just feel like it's such like a wavy line.
Well,
where,
I mean, I have friends who were legit brought up in white supremacist households.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's different in the sense you have to, it's also like, some of it's based on context and also how they handle.
Except that there's no context for Nazis.
no, Nazi.
I'm not saying it's
Nazi
okay.
stuff is, I was never.
But then it's up to you as an individual to decide if you want to deal with that, the labor of like having a friend who was brought up in that culture and has those types of behaviors even more deeply ingrained than like the general racism that everybody in America has. But it's like there's things, I think what it really just always breaks down to, something I mentioned earlier, is, okay, if you are confronted with the knowledge that your actions have hurt somebody, you either care or you don't care. You know what? I don't really have time in my life for people who don't care that they're hurting other people, no matter what it is. And if that issue is an issue related to systemic oppression, do you care enough to actually change or just to feel guilty? And sometimes it takes years to go from just feeling guilty to actually wanting to do something about it. And it's also totally fair if a person who's an oppressed person is like, okay, it's great that you feel bad, but I don't really care about anything until you actually are going to do things to change. Like, just as much as I can have respect for people being on their journeys, I also can have enough respect for myself and my needs to not want to mess with those people until they're at a place where I feel like they're not going to continue to do things that are hurting me. And I will make specific and particular allowances to work with people who I love if they have shown that they want to do the work. But that's just at my discretion and how much energy I have available. I don't owe that to anybody. So.
All right. So there's also a couple of questions or issues. Alexis has brought up a couple of things. She said, let's talk about slave jewelry and why people who wear it are allowed to be leaders in our community. Also blackface and why people who wear it are allowed to be leaders in our community. So I'm just curious, the slave jewelry, was that an issue? Oh, was that
it's called Cruel Love, I
Oh.
think is the name of the seller.
There's actually
Yes.
making modern?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Wow.
So
No.
this came up last year, I believe.
Oh my God.
Someone posted it on Instagram. It was like a slave girl necklace, and she covers all races. Like there's jewelry of Southeast Asian.
Oh,
There's jewelry of black.
Great.
There's
Actually
jewelry of black.
being slaves, like in chains?
Yes, in chains.
Is she American?
I think she's British, but like, hello, British.
No, I mean, it doesn't matter. I was just
Yeah.
curious because I feel like people outside of America are more likely to be like, well, that doesn't exist in our country. So when it's like, yeah, but you still know.
And also it was.
But yeah,
especially in Britain.
So it was kind of brought to the attention of a lot of people of color, marginalized people in the community, and the argument was that, oh, well, it's fetish and like, you know, it's not racist and, you know, I just think it's beautiful and like it, and the fact that the person is still actively able to sell stuff and they haven't been completely shut down because people won't shop with them is just beyond my comprehension.
And people are buying these things.
But basically it's like there's one that's like a neck cuff and it has like a face of like a black man. He has a nose chain and then it connects to like two wrist cuffs. And then there's one that's like, I think, Asian women that have like their hands tied up, and then it's like it's a lot of jewelry it's like it just glorifies it. It's not even, and it's modern made. So I just don't understand why, number one, people are still buying this. People are still shooting in it, wearing it, promoting it, and how this person is still in business. But that is something that has come up again recently, but did also come up last year.
I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that also goes back to supporting companies whose sort of morals and integrity and non-racism
Yeah.
that you agree with. Yeah, I had no idea about that. So, yeah, and also the blackface business. Obviously, we don't want to support blackface. Native fetishization. I mean, really fetishization of any marginalized group. I think that's a big thing. I can't say the word. Making fetishes out of plus size girls or women of color or disabled. I mean, making a fetish of any of that is not okay. No Nazi pinup. Yay.
But I think for other point of, there's people who are figures in our community who are perpetuating this,
Mhm.
and they're still allowed to be figures in our community. They're still allowed to run events in our community, and that doesn't make events like Las Vegas feel like it is a safe place for us to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this is being allowed, what else is going to be allowed
Mhm.
to happen to us while we're there? What are we going to have to see? What are we going to be subjected to? So I think dismantling these people's ability to have a platform and a voice in this community is important, especially if they're perpetuating fetishizing slavery jewelry.
That's crazy. I mean, I think the rebel flag being taken away is like step one
Yeah.
in many steps of.
Like, we can't just be satisfied with that.
No,
That's
not
just
at
the
all.
first
That's what I'm
step.
saying. It's
Yeah.
step one in sort of. I hate the word canceling.
Yeah.
But, just sort of shutting down companies but that's the other thing too is, I mean, okay, so obviously the slave jewelry,
Mhm.
that's very black and white in terms
Yeah.
of like what's wrong and what's right.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I've watched it happen and I've watched in the threads, I mean, people just being destroyed over maybe something happened in the past and before they even get a chance of apologizing or making a statement or anything. And I've seen like canceled and oh my God, just some of the things I've seen. So it's like, where do we balance? Like, of course, like everybody has their entitlement to feel hurt and to feel whatever they feel. But at the same time, like the internet is such a public place where people can be made and destroyed so easily.
Mhm.
So it's like, I don't know what the balance is because there are clearly the really black and white things, but then there's like the in-betweens where it's like, it's messing with people's mental health and careers and personal lives, and so
actions have consequences.
Yeah.
no, I totally
So-
get that, but I also think that consequence maybe should be to the I can't think of the word, sorry.
I think that people are going to be upset, and you have to let them be upset. And what matters is how you respond to it.
Exactly.
Being called out.
Yep.
You can't be
Precisely.
defensive.
Mhm.
I mean, I've done things like the most recent thing was Janelle Monáe had a music video where she has these pants that look like a vagina.
I love those
And then
pants.
she had two other cis female performers that didn't have the pants and it's supposed to represent trans women. And I was like, that's so great.
Right.
Good for her to
It's
do
like,
that.
why weren't they just
And
trans
then
women?
I had a friend of mine who was trans to check me and say, no, if they wanted to represent trans women, they should have trans women. And my response to that was, you're right, I'm sorry. My privilege blinded me from seeing that. Thank you for educating me.
Yeah.
And I edited what I had said. So it really depends on your response to
Right.
things. And if your response is, something that would be considered like a correct response of not getting defensive, you kind of just have to accept that people are going to be upset with you.
Yeah.
And there's not really anything more you can do about it besides trying to work to undo that type of systemic oppression.
Right.
And maybe along the way they'll see that you're doing the work, but people are going to be mad. And
Even if you apologize, they don't owe you anything from that. Like,
yeah,
I think that also like along those lines, like having conversations and responses that are proportionate and equal to the way that the error was made is important. So for example, like if you make a Facebook post that is really problematic and it's and it is perpetuating systemic oppression in some way, and then people in that thread there's arguments and disagreements, and then people are saying things. Like if you are posting on your page and you're fostering an open discussion, you have an obligation to either moderate that discussion, shut down people who are problematic, or say, I'm not able to moderate this discussion right now, I'm going to turn off the comments or whatever. If you do something in a public forum that is harming other people, then an apology must be given in a public forum as well. If you're having an open conversation, you do something problematic in an open conversation, then the discussion should continue to be an open public discussion. Not to say that people can't be having private discussions as well, or that private discussions aren't useful. It's just that, you know what, like when you do something, accountability is important. And it is, if you do something publicly, then the conversation, it needs to, at some portion of it needs to also be public, so that the people who you've hurt with what you did publicly also can see and make a decision of like an assessment of like, have you actually learned? Are you actually trying? Do you understand why you did is wrong? Instead of just doing something for the optics. And that's, I think, tokenism is about optics.
Yeah.
Sometimes public apologies are about optics. And I think we're all, smart people, and we can discern when something is sincere and genuine, and when something is just for the optics because you want it to look good and you don't want to lose money or business or whatever else. And so I think that's just like playing off of like how you handle it. I think that's.
And in addition to that, call out culture is a tool for people who do not have the privilege to be believed, to have their issues validated. It's a way to foster a community and gather a community of people who are going to support you. And it's
I just
kind
have a
of
question. Call out culture, is that like when you're like, this person did this fucked up thing, and everyone's like, yeah, like
yeah,
that?
when we were talking about in these threads where people,
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's because I don't really want to use the example of Jordan Woods, but like everybody just wrote her off immediately, and then Jada Pinkett kind of reached out and gave her a public forum to discuss what happened, because she automatically doesn't believe. So she had to do something public to create a community, to let herself have a fair voice, to have an equal voice, because a lot of the times if we just bring it up to somebody else, no one's going to believe us unless we have our community in a public forum backing us up. So call out culture is a tool that is pretty essential to having marginalized groups have their issues be validated.
And so dismissed.
Yeah.
Because I've had private conversations with Tom about Confederate flag, about the burlesque competition, about the Pinup competition, and it was all dismissed. And the only time I really got a response is when I addressed it in a public way.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think no change ever happens by people being private about anything. So I'm totally with you there. I'm just asking questions just to like help people watching this better understand. I feel like obviously like the people of color, women of color watching this, like understand where you're coming from, but the white people, the non-cis people, or the cis people, whatever, aren't maybe gonna understand the other side. So I'm just hoping that everybody can kind of understand everybody's side.
I don't want to sound like super bitchy by saying this, but if you're called out and you feel uncomfortable about being called out, good.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Because if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel uncomfortable, like sit and think about what you said or what you did or what you're doing that's not right and correct it. And it's supposed to like be this incentive to sort of have this inward reflection, like, is what I'm doing the right thing? Is this what I should have done? Perhaps it should have gone some other way. And that's what I love about Twitter. Like, I hate Twitter, but I love Twitter because you just see people go and you get educated so quickly. And sometimes you don't get that moment because people are just sort of railing at you. But, let that happen. Take a moment, do some personal introspection, and then return to it. Because chances are, if you're just going to rapid fire replies, they're not going to be
thought out.
they're not going to be thought out and thoughtful, and you're not going to have thought about like what the issue really is.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, honestly, like there's been times in my past where I'm called out for stuff, and my first instinct is like, fuck, I feel like such an asshole.
Yeah.
Sorry for the language. That's offended. But yeah, and that I think, but my first instinct with that is, we were talking about it before we started filming. I think a lot of people's first instinct is, I feel like an asshole. I really need to explain myself, and I need to make you know why I'm not an asshole. And I think that's what I'm learning through all of this, me personally, is taking a second to go, shit, I feel like an asshole. Why do I feel like an asshole? How do I feel like less of an asshole without making this person hurt more?
Yeah.
And again, impact is more important than intent. So if you didn't intend to be an asshole, but the impact is hurting all of these people, your intent doesn't hold as much weight as the impact that you caused.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's like you're allowed to feel guilt.
Oh, everybody is loving Jackie right now.
Yeah, it's like you can sit with it. The guilt is a natural reaction.
Yeah.
Like no one's asking you to be superhuman or whatever, but like
Right.
I really like what you said about that, because I always say, like with my clients, that discomfort is a highlighter.
Oh yeah.
It's like discomfort's highlighting the things in you. And I think this is true universally, not just with issues of systemic oppression, but like if you're feeling discomfort about something, it's your psyche's way of telling you something's not right here. Maybe pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that.
In the like disability and accessibility like rights community, like our goal is to make you feel as uncomfortable as possible.
Mhm.
That means that you've thought about it.
Right.
And so like I just put out a panel about sort of like teaching people about disability when that isn't our job. We don't want to teach you about disability rights and how to sort of like change your vernacular so you're not saying like, oh, that's crazy or crippling death.
Oh my
God.
It's a
But like
huge pet peeve.
everyone in the audience was so uncomfortable. It was so tense, and I was like, good.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's mean, but it needs to.
No,
it needs to
not mean.
occur.
It's showing, like, that's the privilege of being able-bodied. Like, I'm
Yeah.
someone who is, like, I have chronic illness and chronic pain stuff, and I'm extremely visually impaired. But I, and also as a fatter person,
Yeah.
like, we have, like on one of the events I run on our event page, I specifically say this event is accessible. Everyone who has purchased a ticket is guaranteed seating. Our seats don't have arms on them. I actually need to add that a little bit because I was like, oh, I should put that so people know that the seats don't have arms.
Mm-hmm.
There's no stairs in between you and the bathroom. It's like that's all really important stuff. But like, when I'm designing flyers for events, I always am like, if this makes my eyes hurt, it's going to make someone else's eyes hurt. So I usually push back pretty hard on that stuff. And I personally need to get better about like, putting like visual descriptors of photos and stuff for those other people who have different visual impairment than I do. Because I'm not legally blind. I'm close, but I'm not legally blind yet. So yeah, I think it's in language,
Yeah.
especially with around accessibility and disability. Community is so important because there's so much, especially like mental health ableism.
Oh,
And as
God,
someone like
yeah.
I struggle with a lot of different types of mental health issues, like that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And like usually words like dumb, stupid, crazy, like using like saying you're OCD when you don't actually have that
Or,
diagnosis.
oh, I'm so
that's struggle.
depressed.
Yeah. I was like, are you actually depressed?
Yeah.
Or like, stuff like that. Like, or like being like, oh, like that person's so borderline. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, don't say that.
No, you hear bipolar all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was happy yesterday and sad today. I'm bipolar. Like, no.
Yeah.
So that is a good segue into one of Jackie's talking points, which was accessibility at community events, which I think you kind of touched on a little bit. But you said like even something as small as saying that it's wheelchair accessible on the flyers.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that's really overlooked is accessibility. Like people don't even think about it. I like when I do classes, when I travel, I had a girl in a motorized wheelchair, and it was in Scotland, like. And it was at this little tiny shop, and she had to like zoom her wheelchair up this ramp, like it was. And we did it. We lifted her. We like made it happen. But it was something I had never thought about.
Right. Because you have the privilege, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because I mean, luckily, like I'm able-bodied enough to sort of maneuver, but there are people who aren't as able-bodied, and they need to be able to know that the aisles are wide enough for a wheelchair, or a motorized wheelchair, or crutches, or whatever, and that they can sort of maneuver around. You need to know that there's like a resting area if they can't stand for a long time, or they can't walk for long durations of time. They need to know that the stage has no steps, especially if it's like a pinup contest.
I was
and-
wondering about that, if the
Yeah,
stage
if-
at Viva has
Yeah,
that.
I was looking on the Viva website prior to this, and they did have a lot of stuff about accessibility and that it was wheelchair accessible and all this great stuff, but they didn't mention anything about the stages or, some of the other outside events. They didn't mention anything about accessibility.
I think the inside, the showroom stage is accessible.
Yes.
There's a ramp, but the outside ones, I don't know about. I don't know if they have ramps.
Or I think the pool one is accessible.
Pool one is accessible.
But
Yeah,
I
the
don't
pool.
know about the actual stage that they do the pinup contest on.
Yeah, is it Pinup Contest
It's outside.
at the
It's on the
main-
it's main stage. Like
main
last year
stage.
we had Fran
yeah
and
yeah.
there were stairs. Like
Okay.
Yeah,
she soldiered on, but yeah, she definitely was like feeling the burn. So like at some point, like the judges have chairs, and I was like, "Do you want to sit?" Like she said she was cool, but yeah, it's definitely like that part of it is not accessible.
Yeah, definitely.
But also, I feel like that's something that could easily be remedied if it needed to be
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah.
But I think that's also
people
too.
care enough. to
Yeah.
remedy it.
Yeah, but I think that's also too a matter of making like a separate page on the website saying which parts of the event are accessible.
Yeah.
So I just want to address something because it's something that has been brought up in the comments, and I don't want to derail this conversation. But somebody brought up the impact that was caused when I said there weren't enough women of color of substance submitted to the Viva contest. This was a conversation that happened on a Viva page. I think you were in this conversation.
I think it was a comment on Motsy's page addressing the
No, it was-
diversity.
It was on the Viva page when girls were talking about like there wasn't enough representation. So I, as a judge, got on, and what I meant in my statement was that I wish more women of color would submit so that the pool was larger. I don't remember the way I worded it, but how it was taken was that I was saying women of color weren't good enough. Not
I
what
think
meant. I
the
fully
way it was
apologize.
taken was that women of color who did submit were not
Like,
quality.
good enough to, and I totally get that, and I get that by how I worded what I worded. The problem with that thread was that my comment was deleted. I'd like to make it clear I did not delete it. There were also a couple of other comments, I think, from judges that were deleted. I don't know who deleted them. So after that, my comment was made, I had no idea that there was a thread that continued afterwards because I wasn't tagged in it. Not to say that I should have gone back and checked it. I didn't. That's totally my bad. And there was a conversation that happened afterwards about why people were hurt about that, which I probably could have been more sensitive to. So I fully apologize for that. That being said, my original comment was not to mean that the women that had applied weren't good enough. Every woman that applies is amazing. But we definitely get applications from all women, whatever, that just like don't have maybe as much thought as some of the other ones do. And that has nothing to do with women of color, that just has to do with the submissions. That being said, that's totally separate from what I mean. I really just honestly meant, I wish when I'm scrolling through picking, I saw more faces.
But
That was all.
do you see this circles back around to the conversation about intent and impact?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, and now like I definitely understand how what I said hurt people, although it wasn't my intent. I get that it was hurtful, and I 100% apologize. It was totally my bad. I really honestly wish that I had have been in that thread for the rest of it so that I could have apologized.
That actually brings up something really interesting about labor and emotional labor that marginalized people do and comment and thread deletion.
Oh, yeah.
So there's, I think part of like navigating this is like, oh my gosh, I said something and I didn't realize it could be taken this way, or like I ended up hurting people, or whatever happens.
So you panic and delete.
Yeah, or you panic and delete, or you delete a comment, or delete part of it, or whatever. And the reason that is not a great practice, and why I'd recommend something else, is because it goes back to accountability. Like, you know what? First of all, someone somewhere has screenshots, so everything on the internet is forever.
Yeah.
Ashleeta has them. A couple other friends have them. The internet is forever. just because you deleted it doesn't make it go away. That's not how this works. Sorry about it. That's just part of life. Second of all, if any people who are marginalized did labor, emotional labor, who took time out and energy out of their day to try to explain, to help people, to do whatever, that invalidates all of that labor that they donated because they wanted to help for whatever reason. And that's really, really not great. So a better, like another practical thing you can take away from this conversation that's less philosophical and more direct action is if you find yourself in a situation where something has gone off the rails of what you intended and the real impact is that you hurt a lot of people, go through the thread, like what Jackie said, like take some time, let it percolate, make a legit apology that's about like genuine feelings and not optics, and then, you know, apologize directly to the people you've harmed. And then you can close the comment thread or make a final capping comment saying, here's what I did, here's what I've learned, here's what I'm gonna try to do in the future to prevent this from happening. Thank the people who helped you, say sorry again, and that's what you do. You don't delete the thread because you feel shame about what you did. The best thing to do is to acknowledge what you did and move forward and really try to improve yourself and make your actions better and the environment within the community better, such that you're helping to dismantle these systems instead of reinforcing them. That's my opinion. I think it is. I think it's something that can be really helpful instead of panicking and deleting. Not saying that you did that.
Lots of people do it
and not knowing who did that, but like it's a natural reaction. It's like exactly what you're talking about, like the oh god, you know. But it doesn't help anybody. No. And people are going to just be even more pissed off.
It just makes you look more guilty, I think, when you delete stuff.
Yeah, and people are going to be more pissed off. It's going to make you look guilty, and people are going to just post the screenshots that they already have.
Yeah. I mean, usually what I do, if I feel like I've posted something that's been like misinterpreted or whatever, or hurt somebody, I'll just do like a edit colon,
exactly,
like a little disclaimer above or something like in all caps, like
here
further explains kind of what this is or why I fucked up or whatever.
That's
what I try to do.
Yeah.
But I did just want to make that clear that like that thread that I was in, I don't know who deleted it, but I also know that Jasmine's comments were deleted. Somebody else's were deleted that were like some of the judges. So I don't know if it was a higher up or whatever, but it was not my guilt that deleted it. If I had known it was there, I would have gone and taken part in that. But I just want to again issue a very sincere apology. I never meant to make anybody feel like they're not good enough. I love all my babes. Like everybody to me, it has a place in my heart and in this world. And so I'm hoping that this will make everybody feel more comfortable.
But it's also not the people who were offended's responsibility, if they were offended, to contact someone directly who did it and have a conversation with them.
No, I get it. All I'm saying in that because it was erased, I never got any notifications. Like I wasn't saying that they're bad because they didn't contact me. I was just saying I never knew a conversation happened afterwards because I wasn't getting notifications on Facebook.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like the people who did see that and who were offended and who commented on how they're offended, unfortunately, it's not their responsibility to come to anybody who said anything and say you offended me with this. If the conversation continues on in a public forum, like you said before, because it's public, they can't be held responsible for not having a one-on-one with the person who hurt them. Because again, it was public.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I agree with that. Okay, I'm sure there's more comments after this. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that whole thing about me, but it's been something that's been brought up a couple of times, so I wanted to just address it. This girl says, I hate how many times I go to things and can't even get a wheelchair through places. And not even knowing until you get there. She said, my sister can walk, but not everyone can. So yeah, I think that's really important. Anybody that is putting on an event, to just make some area that says, so I have a question. So ADA accessible.
I was just about to bring that up.
So what does that include? Do you know?
I know that it means that there's for sure some sort of entrance that is wheelchair accessible.
Okay.
And like the door can open to allow like wheelchairs through, and the building's specifications are wheelchair accessible. That's about the unfortunate extent of my knowledge. I I know that, like, surprisingly, Vegas is one of the most accessible places.
Oh, they want
they want that
for that money.
Exactly. Which is great. But also at the same time, like, any sort of event space that has stages or is a convention, like, fair layout is going to be difficult because you have to make sure that the booths are great, but the aisles are wide enough for people to both walk and have wheelchairs and stuff through them. That is something that I personally need to do more research in, just because it makes me look like a really bad disability rights advocate.
When I was at Comic-Con, I went with two of my friends who are both like in ADA status, and I learned, first of all, I learned that it existed from them. I'm very grateful. They taught me a lot of stuff, a lot of places that don't really, like, unfortunately, I think Disneyland is one of them where they don't really recognize invisible illnesses.
Yeah.
I just had a friend who had a situation.
I've had so many
And-
issues with them.
Wow, I think they said something like, if you are of an ADA status and they ask you to show some sort of like paperwork,
Oh, that's illegal.
that's illegal.
Yeah.
So
You never have to disclose your exact
yeah.
disabled status to anyone or prove.
Yeah, I had a friend who went to Disney a few weeks ago, and she had like letters from her doctor and all this stuff, but like she didn't bring her crutch with her, and they didn't give her any
So I think
stuff.
I've gone to
Recognizing
City Hall and been like,
Accommodations.
I have chronic pain. I can't stand for long durations of time. Like my knees physically lock up and then I just limp everywhere. Is there any way that I can just, have some accessibility where I don't have to stand in line? Like even if it's like you make me sit for like 40 minutes, that's
Right,
fine.
exactly.
I just can't stand.
Right, and that was her thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they
they
didn't.
do not give one shit.
and then I think there's
Have to spend a lot
another
of money
They're
too.
like, just don't come.
Yeah,
another
exactly.
issue that my two friends brought up was he walks with a cane, and whenever he goes somewhere and he says, like, is there ADA accommodations, they try and put him in a wheelchair.
Right, that's what they tried to do
Yeah,
with my
and
friend. They're like,
yeah.
well, why don't you have a wheelchair? And
His
she was like,
goal is to not use one. Like
Yeah.
he's been fighting to not have to have that assistance.
yeah.
And so I think that's like another issue is like you can't just
It's wheelchair or nothing.
Yeah.
Just put everyone in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And that costs money at Disneyland. You have to pay to rent.
Really?
a
Really?
wheelchair.
Oh,
Wow.
So
you
messed
can't-
up.
But if you bring in your own wheelchair.
If you bring in your own, it's
Oh,
fine.
but if you say that you need like some sort of accommodation,
Yeah, they're like,
this
here's
wheelchair.
$7 for a wheelchair,
Yeah.
Oh,
which is ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Now I'm checking myself on that.
Yeah.
See, we're learning
it's something that after
Yeah.
studying Comic-Con and those people like really became aware
Yeah.
of my privilege, blinding me from seeing any
Yeah, no,
anything like that.
absolutely. But I think that's the other important thing too is that in this world, these conversations need to keep happening.
Right.
And we need to just like feel okay to have these conversations.
Right.
And I feel like people need to feel okay to ask a question if you feel uncomfortable or to call someone out if you feel uncomfortable. And not to say that anybody has to answer, like we're saying. But I do think that it needs to stay open and things need to be not deleted and people need to just talk to each other. And I think that's the hard thing right now is I think it's becoming really polarized where there's so much anger and aggression, rightfully so.
Mhm.
But I think it's scaring a lot of people away from having the conversations.
Well, here's the thing. This is something that I thought about a lot in undergrad and grad school when I started understanding like the actual systems behind all this stuff and started studying it.
Mhm.
And like it's stuff that I always had like the impact that I'd always felt since I was a toddler, like as far as long as I can remember. But when I started realizing, because it's about privilege is a lot to do with social power. Like that's where the seat of what privilege is,
Mhm.
that term privilege. And the power, like any energy source, is a finite resource. You can't create more power. All the power in the world already exists. It's just incredibly unbalanced. So, necessarily, if people are going to become empowered, that means that people who have power have to let go of it. And it is not a natural human response to let go of power easily.
Mhm.
People accumulate power because it makes them feel better for whatever things that they're lacking within themselves. And the straight reality of it is that it's white, heterosexual, cisgendered, able-bodied men who have most of the power. So when they feel like power is being stolen from them, when in reality it's just redistributing to be more equalized, which is what it should have been to begin with, and people were just freaking guilty. And anyways,
I think that too, you see a lot of, well, I didn't own slaves, so
Right.
why do I owe you
Yeah.
anything? Where people don't understand the privilege you've gotten from
like
being on the
intergenerational,
backs of the
yeah,
generation.
like the intergenerational wealth, which is not just monetary wealth, it's wealth of privilege and
Yeah.
power as well. So I think I absolutely agree with what you're saying about like that anger, and I just wanted to touch on where the anger is coming from, in my opinion. I think that's where it's coming from, and it makes sense that that anger exists. However, nothing's going to change unless we recognize this is going to feel shitty. Sorry, this is going to feel awful.
I've said the F word like 10 times.
This is not going to feel good. You know what? Hard work usually doesn't feel great, but you don't usually get awesome things without working your butt off. And again, I think it's just, how much do you care? How much do you care? Do you want the world to be a better place? Or are you complacent and you're just like, oh, well, someone else will do it. That's going to be fine. I'm going to sit over here with my, blackface chalkware on my wall and wear my dress covered in tiki idols and blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, fine. If you want to be a jerk, then be a jerk. But then don't get mad at it when people are all over the internet talking about what a jerk you are. If you decide to be a jerk, then people are going to talk about you like that. And that's totally fair too. You know what? It's, you can't get mad at me for calling the sky blue. The sky's freaking blue. I'm going to call it blue. If you don't like that it's blue, I don't know, do something to change the sky. Not pollution though. That was a bad analogy. I take it back.
We get where you're going. But I think that's the other thing too, though, is like, I think like I was saying before, like there's so much anger and aggression happening and it's turning a lot of people off. But I also think that people being turned off need to understand that anger and aggression is rightful.
Right.
And like you were saying, like it's gonna feel shitty and it's gonna feel terrible. Like when all of that stuff happened with me personally, with women feeling like I was saying they weren't good enough or whatever, my instinct was like, I just want to curl up in my little cave and like make it all go away because I feel horrible and I'm crying and I'm emotional and I feel like I've hurt people and I don't know what to do. And it was after I had started planning this, or no, it was right before I started planning this, and I was like, I want to do something. And then my boyfriend was like, well, are you still going to do the talk? And it's like, yeah, like it might be uncomfortable. Like I'm getting uncomfortable comments and questions on here right now and it sucks, but it is what it is. And I think that's the thing too, like white people have to understand like it's going to be shitty and uncomfortable. And also too, like men need to understand it's going to be shitty and uncomfortable. And able-bodied people need to understand it's going to be shitty and uncomfortable. And like you were saying, I think that's one thing that is huge right now is the able-bodied versus disabled world. Like I think it's way under talked about. You also brought up too, which I wanted to cover, this captions.
Yeah, please.
Which I've had a lot of people ask me about, and somebody actually sent me a link. If anybody has this link, please put it in the comments. Of a girl who explains how to put captions on your videos.
Oh, I have them. I'll send them.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I haven't had time to do it yet myself because I've been sick. And I also have 400 videos. I don't know if you can go back retroactively and put captions on videos. Do you know if you can do that? Or if you have to do it as you're uploading?
I think you can edit, maybe, especially because of like YouTube rolling out that feature.
Yeah.
That I don't know, but
it's so important. I've had so many girls ask me to caption videos, and it's something, again, I never thought about. So
yeah. I think there's services you can use also who can do them in bulk, and like, yes, it's an investment, but I think it's a worthwhile investment, especially like that's work that you can do as an able-bodied person to do that, since you're a hearing person. And there's
I think it
guides
also
too.
applies to, it's because it's not only people who can't hear me captions.
Right. Oh,
I
yeah,
have autism, and I need to see the captions to understand the context of things.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sure.
it's a
It's a learning tool.
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same kind of learner. I'm better with things written down where you can read something.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that was helpful for that too. Oh, also you brought up making tutorials that are easy for people with mobility problems with their arms, which is another thing. I had a girl that was like, I only have one arm. How do I do my hair? And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought about such a thing. So I like sat there like how would you do this? Or like, I mean, my ex-husband had one eye, so it made me think of like, man, if I was trying to do my eyeliner on this side and I couldn't see it, like, how would you do? So I need to do better myself in making videos for people. But I think just thinking of people's abilities when you're creating content, or even just making like a sub note, like if you have this problem or whatever, like here's how to make this a little bit easier for you.
Right. I think especially like with people who might have like any sort of chronic pain situations, like holding your arms up for that long is like really, really, really hard. So, or like if you are struggling with fine motor skills, like that's also like, there's always accommodations that can be made, and just, you know, even mentioning them is, I think, is a great start.
And if captions aren't doable for whatever reason, even just like posting a loose outline or a loose transcript is still helpful because it's better than nothing.
Something,
Yeah, and then, you know, using accessible fonts, all of those things on flyers to help with
Accessible
people with
fonts.
like visibility
So
issues
important.
and like dyslexia, things like that.
Wheelchair accessibility at National Historic Landmarks. Do you think that you find a problem with that? Have you noticed?
Oh yeah, there's like all these historic buildings that
because they're so old.
yeah they can't
So they have-
they can't redo
I
them.
definitely find that in Europe. It's crazy, but it's. I mean, what are you gonna do with
Japan
the Colosseum?
also.
Like, are you gonna tear down a national landmark to build? I think that's like kind of a. Ooh, I don't know. What's the answer? to
I don't know
that?
how I feel about that.
Yeah, because like you don't want to ruin a landmark to. I mean, you want people to be accessible, but then how do you preserve
Hoverboards.
I don't know.
Everyone.
hoverboards?
Yeah.
Really such a bad hoverboards. I was told we would have them by now.
Sorry, I'm not reading more comments. There's so many coming through, and we're having conversation. I feel bad interjecting with comments, and they're coming from like different. Somebody's like, "Can you read more comments?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm trying."
Do we want to maybe take maybe the last 10 minutes
Just
to look,
for questions. or-
and or
Well, I've kind of been
questions?
interjecting as they're like a lot of them are just people talking with each other.
Okay,
Oh, cool.
that's so great. Yes, we're doing a thing.
Oh, there's also one thing I really want to discuss is like the definition of racism.
Oh yes.
Oh,
I think that's a great thing to talk about.
Because I can't say how many times I've been like, what you're doing is racist, and the person posts that like definition, Webster's definition.
Well,
of
the dictionary
racism.
says. I just
And it's
want to
like,
say
well, the dictionary used
is
to say that
racist.
marriage is also between a man and a woman. So things change. You have to keep up with that. But I think people think that racism is wearing a white hood and saying the N-word and like, you know, running people out with a pitchfork, and that's not all racism is. And I think we are starting to, well, not us because we know, but I think the idea that casual racism and liberal racism is a huge issue, and like it doesn't have to be saying the N-word. It can be dismissing a person of color's concern. It can be trying to define racism when you haven't experienced it.
Taking up space.
And taking up space, and you know, not holding other people accountable, being complacent, all of that is a type of racism. And I think casual racism is starting to become more and more insidious because people are trying to define it as this one thing, which first of all, the definition is power plus privilege. But I think that's also something that is lost on a lot of people that needs to be kind of talked about a lot more.
So I think that's a really great nuanced description. I want to break it down even more simplistically because I think that a lot of people like racism the term has been kind of co-opted and misused, and in a more colloquial sense, and there's the literal sociological sense, which is what it actually means. So to break it down even further, like into its like actual roots, racism is a type of discrimination. So if you think of discrimination is the tree, and racism is like probably one of the biggest branches on that tree. Discrimination is when you are having opinions that have negative impact that are based on appearance, or outward traits, phenotypic traits. Racism is when that you're having those feelings about a certain group that looks a certain way, that appears a certain way, certain visual traits, and you are a person who has power and privilege in society, then it is racism. That's how racism happens. That is why it is impossible. Sorry. Oh, sure.
Just keep going.
That is why it's impossible for a person of color to be racist against a
Thank you.
person.
I was gonna bring up
Yeah.
reverse racism.
Yeah, that's why reverse racism, it does not actually exist, because that's not what the word racism means. That's not how racism works. A person of color can absolutely be discriminatory against a white person categorically. You know what? And that happens. And I'm not sure that I would say that that's necessarily an unwise thing. You know what? If you keep getting bitten by snakes and they keep poisoning you, wouldn't you be afraid of all snakes? Like, I think that's pretty reasonable. I would be very cautious with all snakes if a lot of them bit me all the time and kept poisoning me. That seems like a very sensible thing to be discriminatory about. However, I don't personally, as a person of color, have societal power or societal privilege to give me the impact of systemic racism. Racism is a system of oppression that is perpetuated by those who have power and privilege, discriminating against others based on their race, heritage, cultural, everything, appearance, and existence. So just that's the actual textbook definition. That is a sociologically sound description of what racism truly is, not what, Webster's dictionary said 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I want to say though that they are really keeping up with the times now.
Webster's?
Yeah, or Merriam-Webster now. Whoever's running their Twitter knows what's going on.
Oh, that's
Okay.
great.
Yeah, they just
work on changing that definition.
Yeah.
but they I didn't realize it was still said that. I thought it updated that. But they added something they added the honorific mix and explained what mix means, which I was like, okay, go ahead. But if they still haven't updated the racism thing, they need to get on that.
I think sometimes too, it's hard to put one sentence definition on something that's so nuanced. Like you just explained it so well in
But
a very long paragraph.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think I have a hard time because when people talk about reverse racism, I want to be like, no, that doesn't exist. But I'm not eloquent enough in understanding it to explain why.
It's hard.
So I'm gonna be like, watch my live video. Fast forward to an hour in, and you'll find it.
And it literally took me over a decade of academic study to be able to say it in even that short amount of time. And this is something I have deliberately studied for almost 2 decades of my life. And that's not everyone has the academic privilege to do that. I happen to have that experience.
So the reason why I got up was because we have people leaving some bad comments.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to give the warning that if you leave anything that is hateful or racist or wasn't racist. Well, maybe it was racist. I don't know. I didn't read that much. I just heard people get this person out of here. So I'm like,
okay.
But if anybody's leaving shitty comments, I'm gonna delete you. And that's another thing too that I love on the internet is when people say freedom of speech, and I say you're in my living room when you're on my page, and if you're saying something hateful and racist, I'm gonna delete it. So that's where I draw the line. I don't delete if I personally have posted something that needs to be explained, or if there's thoughtful conversation happening between people, even if people are getting upset, I leave it there. But once people start name calling and being racist or sexist or whatever, that gets deleted, and it always will on my page. So if you come to my page for drama, you're never gonna find it because I don't let that
also you're not the government. Freedom of speech only applies to the government.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, you're not the government. So just let me know.
Baby steps.
And it's you know what? If you're being a jerk on the internet, people can call you out for being a jerk on the
That's
internet.
and that's what I've always said is my page is my living room. So if
Yeah,
you're sitting in my living room and you're saying something shitty, I'm gonna kick you out of my house.
Yep,
That's the way it goes.
Yep.
So hopefully nobody else leaves any stupid comments because
And if they do screen cap it, send it to me.
Yeah, Alexa
That
said
word
there's nothing
stupid.
wrong with having a zero tolerance policy when it comes to racism.
We're stupid.
Oh, sorry. Ridiculous.
Acceptable. I love that word.
I love it.
You know what's funny is I've been watching a lot of old shows now.
Oh my god.
It's watch
I
ER and they say the R word
Mhm.
when
Oh my
talking
gosh.
about like people with Down syndrome, like doctors,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, oh, every time
Stop
I
it,
say
George Clooney,
oh,
don't do that.
it's like hearing the N-word. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Oh, yeah.
so cringy and terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's George Clooney.
Or going back to watching like reruns of Friends and so much fat
so
phobia
cringy.
Yes.
against Monica.
So cringy.
Yeah, it was really, it's Friends is one of my favorite shows, but I fully recognize how problematic it is. It's like, I'm not endorsing it, I'm just saying like, it's nostalgically comfortable for me.
Well, it's our generation too. Like
Yeah.
generationally, that's what we watched and that's what we
Yeah.
thought was okay.
Yeah. But like as a fat woman, like it's really interesting to see how they navigate it and how my values have changed and evolved, because like as a chubbier preteen, I never saw fat people on TV at all. So to see even like to know that she was fat and like that
And
to
if that
see-
wasn't okay.
no, even to see it represented at all, I was like,
Oh.
well, this isn't great, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Aw.
And that's a lot of my feelings about being represented growing up,
Yeah.
were that like, well, this isn't great, but it's better than nothing, I guess. And that's how I felt about Apu on The Simpsons.
Oh,
I was like, well, this
yeah.
is not great, but it's all I have, so I guess I have to be okay with it.
But that's another reason why representation matters.
Exactly.
And like large sections of representation instead of tokenism. So you're not just getting the stereotype of
Right.
each
Yeah.
piece. All right, let me look and see what we have. Okay, have anything else? We've been going for an hour. Hopefully we're not boring everyone to tears. We still have 40 people in here though.
I have to go in a little bit, so.
Yeah, I have to pee really bad. Okay, just conversation happening on there. Continue conversing. Just want to make sure we cover everybody's talking points and my what is happening here? Technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. No! It's just,
Uh-oh.
oh no! It is an old iPad. Oh, there we go. Stay! Okay, we talked about cultural appropriation. Why certain symbols shouldn't be welcome at subculture events. We talked about Confederate flag, tiki idols, gatekeeping. Anything anybody wants to say about that?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about that. So this has kind of been an ongoing thing, where people who have a platform in the community, including people of color who have a platform in the community, are continuing to push the status quo of how things are going and dismiss things from other people of color because they want to be comfortable, because they want to keep their gigs, because they think that respectability politics is something that is more important than going to bat for other people of color in a community.
Can I quickly explain what respectability politics is? Okay, so quick interjection. Respectability politics is when people who are oppressed use and play into the systems that the oppressor uses so that they will be taken more seriously, perhaps at the expense of other people who are oppressed. So an example of this is like if someone is, like, let's say one black woman or black femme is really, really angry about someone saying that natural hair is disgusting and should not be allowed in the workplace. And another black femme comes in and says, I don't see why you're so upset. Like, if we just had a nice conversation where we were polite and then maybe actually people would take us seriously, you're actually the one who's making our cause not be listened to. So that's a situation where the black femme who's saying you need to be nicer is exercising respectability politics over the black femme who is expressing anger because not being nice is seen as more respectable or accepted by the status quo, by the systems of the oppressor, than a black femme who's expressing her righteous and valid anger about a topic about that they are experiencing.
And so in line with that, it completely undermines a lot of things that people are currently working towards in this community, and having our like rightful anger and the way we talk about things being reduced to drama when it's like racism is not drama. It is something that's important and it's something that needs to be talked to, and I don't have to be nice when I'm talking about it.
Literally,
I don't
most
have
people.
to be I don't have to sugarcoat anything. It's something that I experience every day, so I can talk about it however I want. And to see other people of color in this community in high positions with big platforms continuously undermine it and continuously reduce it and dismiss it and try and, play respectability politics so they can keep their gig, they don't have to deal with drama, is so harmful. And I've seen it so much lately. People continuing to promote companies that come out with, like Chinese New Year collections that don't have any people of Chinese descent, who, are trying to defend people who are continuously doing things that are harmful to a plethora of marginalized people. And to see other people who are part of the community getting hurt gives them the idea that it's okay. And I'm so tired of having to navigate around that. And it's something that we need to address. And, if you don't want to be an ally to your own group, if you don't want to stand up for other people in your own marginalized group, then don't say anything. Because you saying oh, this is drama, oh, well, this person was nice to me, is undermining all of our work and is causing us to continue to suffer under oppressive behavior, companies, and situations in this community.
This is so unrelated and you're super valid, but your lipstick is so pretty. Every time you talk, I'm just, are you doing it too?
Yeah, so
It's
Fuck
so sorry.
Hollywood.
Fuck
It's from Lip Slut. And
Lip
100% of the proceeds go to, I think, women's violence advocates or
that's
something.
amazing.
Oh my
Lip
gosh.
Slut, it's called Fuck Hollywood. They also have one that's called Fuck Trump.
Yay!
And I think they have a Fuck Kavanaugh one.
So my
Yeah.
side note actually went
So
to
Lip Slut, buy from them.
Lip Slut.
Sweet.
Sorry, I'm such
It's
an
a
asshole. I
great
totally did know
color.
that. But
Yeah.
thank you for that. I'm glad that I brought up the
Even the music is.
okay. Respectability politics, talk about that. Misuse of term bullying, right? Fragility, tone policing. I think that's kind of what you're talking about with drama. When people say they're being bullied.
It's not bullying to bring up that someone is hurting you in a way that, has very serious impacts on you and your health. And, it's, I basically along those lines, I think respectability politics and bullying and gatekeeping all go hand in hand, because a lot of it's oh, you're being so mean to me. It's okay, Karen, if you're being racist, me saying that you are being racist is not bullying you. And me telling people that I had this racist experience with you is not bullying you. It is telling people what happened.
And keeping people safe.
And keeping other people safe. And if you don't like that, Karen, maybe you shouldn't do it.
I mean, I think too, I'm guilty of that, feeling like I've always been a catch more flies with honey. I don't want to be mean, but I feel
too,
but for me, I think mine came from when I started in the pinup world. It was all mean girl bullies. And it was mean girl bullies telling the baby pinups to be mean girl bullies, and it was okay. And pinup girl clothing was the leader of that behavior.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, not to call anyone out, but calling
No,
people
that's
out.
fine. I've been on the inside and the outside of that situation.
But it wasn't just them. I just think that was just the way the pinup world is. Anything that's female centric is always going to be sort of mean girl. There's going to be some mean girls. So when I came up, I was I want to be positive and I want everybody to be friends. And I don't care how Disney princess it was. I still felt like that was the way I wanted to run my stuff. That being said, I'm a white girl, so I don't understand the anger that you guys feel because I don't have it. So my instinct always was to be oh, but if you were a little nicer, maybe we could talk.
Right.
But also in learning and speaking with women of color and learning the anger and where it comes from, now I get it. You have a right to be angry and you have a right to call people out and do that however you want. That's not my place to tell you. I do my things the way I do it. You guys do things the way you everybody has a right to feel how they feel about their things and about their oppressions. And so I think that's another thing with the bullying and the drama that we need to all kind of think about a little bit more from other people's perspectives. I think also too, it's just to take a second to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And if you can't take a minute to put yourself in someone else's shoes, then you don't have a right to tell them anything because you don't understand where they're coming from. And I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Also somebody asked for all of your social media links.
Oh,
So after we are done, I'm going to get all of their links and I'm going to put them in the title, the description of this live chat, so then everybody can find all of you guys. Oh man, I got another person that I need to ban. Hold on. Wait, I already banned this guy. Why is he back?
What up, guy? You want me outside?
Okay, wait. Why sociopolitical context matters, nothing happens in a vacuum. I think that was yours.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I mean that's.
Please speak on that while I ban some people.
So that's basically like what the point was. Like, it's the reason why intersectionality matters, and now intersectionality is was coined by, oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but she's a black scholar, a black femme scholar who I think she's a lawyer or a JD.
What's her name, sir?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I wish I remembered your name. But
You're so polite, man.
well, black femmes deserve extra respect, in my opinion.
I get it.
So, and she was working. It was a case about Black women not being hired or represented as much in the workplace. It was like a workforce legal case, and they're like, well, Black men are hired more than blah blah blah. And then she made the point that she made in her case, and her legal argument was that that there's extra oppression of being a woman and being Black, and then being a Black woman is like even more oppression on top of that. So that's where the concept of intersectionality comes from. It's from a Black femme, and it's now been expanded to include situations where you if you are an oppressed person, like the more different types of oppression you experience, the more compounded your experience is going to be. And in order to properly acknowledge the experience and the challenges that come along with that, it's important to recognize that that all of those different types of oppression exist and they create a different experience, and B, that there are systems in the world that create those types of oppression and that perpetuate those types of oppression. And if you're not cognizantly and like mindfully and actively working against those systems of oppression that exist, like racism, sexism, sizeism, ableism, transphobia, homophobia, Islamophobia, I'm sure I'm missing some in there, ageism. If you're not actively working against those, then the chances are, if you're not even examining them at the very least, the chances are pretty good that you are in fact perpetuating them, and that any type of activism you do is not going to be intersectional. It means it's not actually investigating and being conscious of and relating to the fact that when different types of oppression meet, it makes it that much harder, and that you're, by virtue of living in the world that we live in, you're participating in those systems.
It's like white feminism.
Exactly.
I never want to use that term again.
No,
I know.
exactly. It's exactly white feminism. White feminism exists. The concept exists in a vacuum. It is ignoring every other types of oppression that exists to focus on just one issue of the issue of sexism, not taking into account anything else that contributes to that, especially cis sexism and racism, and to some extent sizeism. But yeah, again, that's a really long-winded way of explaining it, but there's a lot of nuance, and it's hard to explain it in like a one sound bite type of thing. But
yeah,
that's why I wanted to bring that up. It's that, like, you can't say, well, it's just blah blah blah, or it's just blah blah blah. Well, if that's not how the world works. The world is the world, and there's all these systems whirling around each other. So you can't say it's just blah blah blah, because you know what? It's never just A. It's also A, B, and C, and they're all working together.
Just interject.
I'm done.
Okay. That's why I see this a lot, where people say, well, why do you have to make everything about race? Why do you have to make everything about like sexism? And it's because everything is connected.
It already is.
Like it already is, regardless of whether or not you want to recognize that. And it's something I see a lot. But yeah, it is. It always is. It's just, that's because things don't exist in a vacuum.
Yay. All right. Is there any last thing that anybody wants to address before we wrap? Think really hard. I got all of our talking points.
I'm just gonna say, it might be hard, but it's worth it.
Mhm.
And I think that if you're listening to this, you're already making a really great step in the right direction. So thank you. Keep doing it.
Before you respond to something, calling you out, maybe take a step back and think why it's happening, and definitely do not be defensive. And try and see the other perspective and listen to people who are marginalized and they're telling you that something's wrong or that something you're doing is wrong or harmful, because like we're probably not wrong about our own experiences, and believe us.
Yeah, believe us.
Yeah. And we know that no one is perfect. We slip up. I'll say something and be like, oh crap, I did not need to say that, and catch myself. And that's okay, that's human, but be cognizant of what you're saying and what you're doing, and really listen. What other people are saying is important.
I think too, on top of that, is caring about all people, not just people that you think are important.
Mm-hmm.
And not making excuses for people who you like just because they're your friends or people you look up to.
Mm-hmm.
Try your friends.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it for now.
Yay. So thank you everybody for, oh, now our old feed is on there. Thank you everybody for coming and chatting with us. Let me just make sure there's not any last minute questions. Thank you. Alexis said I can always come to her with questions about intersectionality, racism.
Oh, that's so nice.
Hey Alexis, I don't have your information. If you will email me so I have your information, that would be so awesome. My email is theonlycherrydollface@gmail.com. I can't tell you how much that means to me.
Alexis does a lot of voluntary emotional labor for people.
That's great.
Is very
That's making me
appreciated.
emotional. I'm not gonna cry. I cry on the internet like every time I do anything. That's really, really nice. Thank you. I really, really appreciate
Maybe we should all support her business.
that. Ooh, what's your
Yes.
business? What is it?
Ames and Hill Style House, and she makes every single car show outfit I've ever worn.
What?
They're beautiful.
I sketch it up and I send
Wait,
it
did
to
she
her.
make the play suit you wore at Viva a few years ago? The
Yes.
really, really cute one?
Yes, she's made every single
Oh, that's
the one with the red.
amazing. Yeah.
The with red, the one with
Alexis,
the hands.
put the link to your company Facebook on this feed, and then everybody can look at her stuff.
Her work is amazing, everybody.
Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, no blah. All your things are important. Just making sure that there's not any more questions. Okay, so that's it. Thank you guys for joining this hour and 45-minute live chat. I'm sure all of us have to pee because we've all been drinking water. But this stuff is important, so please watch and rewatch. And if you feel uncomfortable, examine why, and keep talking to each other, and just give a shit about each other, I think, really, at the end of the day. And do your best to be an ally and do better. That's all I have to say about it. Okay, that's it. My head's gonna get really close while I turn this thing off. Oh, and I'll put everybody's link in the Facebook thing when this is done so everybody can see all these lovely ladies. Okay, bye.
Bye.